My name is Bishop, a 35-year-old single dad from Portland, raising my 8-year-old son Carter after losing my wife during childbirth. Last weekend, Carter's birthday party turned into a nightmare when I found his special dinosaur cake smashed in the trash. When I confronted my sister Natalie, she sneered. He didn't deserve it anyway. I grabbed Carter and left our own party, never expecting a tearful call from Mom the next morning begging me to save Natalie's wedding. Before I dive into what happened, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from, and hit that subscribe button if you've ever had to stand up for someone you love. Life as a widower wasn't something I ever imagined for myself. Emma and I had been high school sweethearts, married right after college, and were thrilled when we found out we were expecting. We painted the nursery together, picked out names, and dreamed of the life we'd build as a family of 3. But those dreams shattered the day Carter was born. There were complications during delivery. A placental abruption that happened so suddenly the doctors couldn't save Emma despite their best efforts. In an instant, I became both a father and a widower, holding my perfect newborn son while mourning the love of my life. The first year was a blur of grief, sleepless nights, and learning how to be a parent without my partner. I was fortunate to have a job that allowed me to work from home 3 days a week as a graphic designer, which meant I could be there for Carter. Every milestone, his first smile, first steps, first words, was bittersweet, filled with joy, but also the ache of Emma's absence. I'd talk to Carter about his mom, constantly showing him photos, telling him stories about how brave and kind she was, making sure Emma remained a presence in his life, even though he'd never meet her. As Carter grew, we developed our own special routines and bond. Every morning started with our superhero pancakes, misshapen attempts at dinosaurs or rockets that Carter always claimed were perfect. Weekends meant our adventure days, where we'd explore local parks, museums, or just ride bikes along the riverfront. Before bed each night, we'd add a star to our good things jar, a small note about something positive that happened that day, no matter how small. My relationship with my sister Natalie, however, had always been strained even before Emma's death. 3 years younger than me, Natalie had always been my parents' golden child, straight-A student, homecoming queen, successful marketing executive. While I chose a creative career and valued family time, Natalie pursued status and perfection with an almost ruthless determination. From the moment I became a single father, Natalie's criticism became relentless. She'd comment on Carter's clothes. "Don't you iron anything?" His energy level. "Have you had him tested for ADHD?" And my parenting. "Children need structure, Bishop, not just fun." When Carter was 4, he accidentally spilled juice on Natalie's designer handbag during a family dinner, and she didn't speak to us for 3 months. My parents always made excuses for her behavior. "That's just how Natalie is," or "she means well," leaving me to shield Carter from her cutting remarks. Carter, being the sweet, sensitive child, he has kept trying to win his aunt's approval. He'd make her cards, show her his artwork, tell her about his interests in dinosaurs and space. But Natalie always seemed to view him as an inconvenience, something messy and unpredictable that didn't fit into her perfectly curated life. When Natalie met Richard at a charity gala 2 years ago, it seemed like the perfect match. Richard came from old money, ran his family's investment firm, and shared Natalie's obsession with appearances. Their relationship progressed quickly, and the wedding planning began almost immediately after their engagement. Not just any wedding, the wedding of the century, according to Natalie. For the past year, our family conversations had revolved around nothing but the upcoming nuptials. The venue, Willowbrook Estate, was the most exclusive in the state, booked 18 months in advance with a non-refundable deposit of $20,000. Natalie had hired a renowned wedding planner, chosen a designer dress that cost more than my annual salary, and meticulously selected everything from hand-calligraphed invitations to imported flowers. My mother, Patricia, had thrown herself into supporting Natalie's vision, acting as her unofficial assistant, accompanying her to every appointment and tasting. Dad funded most of it, writing checks without complaint despite the occasional wince. The wedding had become my mother's obsession almost as much as Natalie's, her chance to show off her successful daughter to all their friends and relatives. Meanwhile, Carter's 8th birthday was approaching. He'd been talking about it for months, excited about turning a whole hand plus 3 fingers old. All he wanted was a dinosaur-themed party with his grandparents, a few friends from school, and his special dinosaur cake. The cake was important to him. He'd seen a T-Rex design in a bakery window and had his heart set on it. The cake wasn't cheap at $150, but I'd saved for it, wanting to make his day special. Carter had carefully crafted handmade invitations for everyone, including a special one for Aunt Natalie and Uncle Richard, with extra glitter, because grown-ups need more sparkles to be happy, he'd explained, with the pure logic of childhood. The Saturday of Carter's birthday arrived with perfect spring weather. I decorated our modest backyard with streamers, balloons, and dinosaur cutouts. Carter woke up at 6 in the morning, too excited to sleep, and helped me set up the games and goodie bags for his friends. His eyes were bright with anticipation, his dinosaur t-shirt freshly washed for the occasion. "Do you think Aunt Natalie will like our party, Dad?" he asked as we arranged chairs. I ruffled his hair. "I'm sure she will, buddy. And even if she's busy with wedding stuff, today is all about you and what makes you happy." "I saved her the blue goodie bag because she always wears blue," he said proudly, showing me the bag he'd specially decorated with extra stickers. His thoughtfulness made my heart swell with pride and ache with worry at the same time. I just hoped for once that Natalie would see how special her nephew was. By 2 o'clock that afternoon, our backyard had transformed into a lively gathering. My parents arrived first, my father Thomas, carrying a large gift wrapped in dinosaur paper, my mother Patricia already fussing about whether we had enough ice and if the weather would hold. Carter's friends from school, Max, Jaden, and twins Sophie and Sadie, came with their parents, quickly forming an excited cluster around the dinosaur egg hunt I'd set up. My best friend Mike showed up with his girlfriend Amber, bearing not just a gift but also a dinosaur costume head that he immediately put on, causing peals of laughter from the kids. Mike had been my rock through everything, from Emma's death to the challenges of single parenthood, and seeing him make Carter and his friends laugh filled me with gratitude. "Dino Mike is here to party," he roared through the costume, chasing the shrieking children around the yard. By 3:30, everyone had arrived except Natalie and Richard. Carter kept glancing at the gate, his excitement momentarily dimming each time someone else came through who wasn't his aunt. I checked my phone. No messages explaining their delay. "Don't worry, sweetie," my mother said, noticing Carter's frequent glances. Natalie texted me they're running late. Something about a final wedding dress fitting running over time. At 4:15, nearly an hour and a half after the party's start time, Natalie and Richard finally arrived. My sister wore designer sunglasses and a cream-colored pantsuit that seemed wildly impractical for a children's birthday party. Richard trailed behind her in a business-casual outfit, his attention focused on his phone. "Sorry we're so late," Natalie announced to no one in particular as she surveyed our backyard setup with barely concealed disdain. The traffic from downtown was atrocious, and we had wedding errands all morning. Carter abandoned his game mid-play and ran to greet them. "Aunt Natalie, Uncle Richard, you came. I saved you the blue goodie bag with extra stickers." Natalie accepted Carter's hug, stiffly careful not to let him wrinkle her outfit. "Yes, well, we can only stay for an hour. We have dinner reservations at Maison Rouge with Richard's parents to discuss the rehearsal dinner." Richard finally looked up from his phone, giving Carter an absent pat on the head. "Happy birthday, kiddo. 8 right." "Yes, I'm a whole hand plus 3 fingers now," Carter demonstrated excitedly, holding up 8 fingers. "Charming," Richard murmured, already looking back at his phone. Throughout the next hour, Natalie's passive-aggressive comments flowed freely. When she stepped into our kitchen to get a drink, "Bishop, don't you ever dust the top of these cabinets? There's a layer of grime up here." When Carter and his friends were playing a particularly energetic game of dinosaur tag, "Those children are absolutely wild. Shouldn't someone be supervising them more closely?" Max nearly knocked over that potted plant. Upon seeing the paper plates and dinosaur napkins, I suppose these themed parties are economical, though proper tableware would teach the children about appropriate dining etiquette. I bit my tongue each time, reminding myself that this was Carter's day, and creating conflict would only upset him. My mother, ever the peacekeeper, fluttered around Natalie, offering her shade drinks and validating her every observation with, "Yes, dear, you're right," or, "We should mention that to Bishop." When it came time for Carter to open presents, We gathered everyone around the picnic table. Carter's joy at each gift was genuine and effusive. A dinosaur encyclopedia from my parents, a remote-control pterodactyl from Mike and Amber, dinosaur pajamas and books from his friends. He thanked each person with a hug, his happiness radiating across the yard. When he got to Natalie and Richard's gift, a small box wrapped in plain silver paper, his excitement was undiminished. He carefully unwrapped it to reveal a children's watch. "Thank you, Aunt Natalie and Uncle Richard. It's so cool," Carter exclaimed, examining the watch with genuine interest, despite it having nothing to do with dinosaurs. As he turned the watch over, I noticed something that made my stomach tighten. A small gift tag partially removed with another child's name still faintly visible. They had clearly re-gifted something they'd received for someone else. If Carter noticed, he didn't show it immediately, putting the watch on his wrist and showing it to his friends. His capacity for gratitude, even for a thoughtless gift, made my chest ache with pride. Throughout the gift opening, Richard had taken 3 business calls, stepping just far enough away to be heard talking about quarterly projections and market fluctuations. Natalie had checked her watch repeatedly, sighing loud enough for everyone to hear. Finally, it was time for the cake, the moment Carter had been anticipating most. I excused myself to go to the kitchen where I'd stored the dinosaur cake in the refrigerator. Opening the fridge door, I felt a jolt of confusion. The cake wasn't on the shelf where I'd placed it. I checked every shelf, thinking perhaps my mother had moved it while organizing drinks earlier. Nothing. "Mom," I called out, stepping back into the yard. "Did you move Carter's cake from the fridge?" She looked puzzled. "No, dear. Isn't it in there?" A ripple of concern went through the guests as I continued searching, checking the garage refrigerator, the countertops, even absurd places like cabinets where a cake couldn't possibly be. "Dad, where's my dinosaur cake?" Carter asked, his voice small and uncertain as he followed me back into the kitchen. "I'm not sure, buddy. I'm still looking," I assured him, trying to keep the worry from my voice. Mike joined the search, checking outside in case someone had already brought it out. It was Amber who made the discovery, coming in from the side of the house with a troubled expression. "Bishop," she said, quietly gesturing for me to follow her away from Carter. "I think I found it, but it's not good." She led me to the trash cans beside the garage. There in the open bin was the remnants of Carter's dinosaur cake. Smashed and ruined, the carefully crafted T-Rex head crushed beyond recognition. Green and blue frosting smeared against black garbage bags. I stared in disbelief, a cold feeling washing over me. This wasn't an accident. Someone had deliberately taken the cake from the refrigerator and destroyed it. For a moment I couldn't move, staring at the destroyed masterpiece that had meant so much to my son. The cake's once magnificent T-Rex head was now unrecognizable, smooshed against coffee grounds and yesterday's dinner scraps. The carefully piped "Happy 8th Birthday Carter" was smeared across the side of the trash can. "What the hell?" Mike whispered beside me, peering into the bin. "Who would do this?" A sick feeling settled in my stomach as a suspicion formed, but I pushed it down, not wanting to jump to conclusions. I needed to handle this carefully. Carter and his friends were waiting for the highlight of the party. "What's wrong, Dad?" Carter's voice came from behind us. He'd followed us, concern etched on his small face. Before I could stop him, he peered around me and saw the remains of his cake. His eyes widened, lips trembling as he processed what he was seeing. "My dinosaur cake," he whispered. "What happened to it? Did it fall?" The innocent question broke my heart. "I don't know yet, buddy," I said, putting my arm around his shoulders. "But we'll figure it out." By now, other guests had gathered, murmurs of shock and confusion spreading. My mother gasped when she saw the trash can. Oh my goodness, who would do such a thing? I noticed something then. Natalie, standing back from the group, arms crossed, expression unreadable behind her designer sunglasses. Richard was still on his phone several yards away, completely disengaged from the unfolding situation. "Carter," I said gently, "why don't you go with Mike for a minute? Maybe he can do some more dinosaur chases with your friends while I figure this out." Mike immediately understood, transforming back into Dino Mike with forced enthusiasm. "Who wants to see if they can outrun a T-Rex roar?" He guided Carter and the other children back toward the yard. Though Carter's movements were reluctant, his excitement thoroughly deflated. Once the children were out of earshot, I approached Natalie, keeping my voice low. "Can I talk to you for a minute privately?" She sighed dramatically but followed me to the side of the house. "What, we need to leave soon for our dinner reservation." "Did you do something with Carter's cake?" I asked, directly watching her face carefully. "Why would you immediately assume it was me?" she snapped, but there was something defensive in her posture. "Because you're the only person here who consistently treats Carter with contempt," I replied evenly. "Did you throw away his cake, Natalie?" She was silent for a beat too long, adjusting her sunglasses. So what if I did? That monstrosity had enough sugar to keep him bouncing off the walls for days. The confirmation hit me like a physical blow. "You deliberately ruined an 8-year-old's birthday cake, your own nephew's special day." "He didn't deserve it anyway," she said coldly. "Have you seen how hyperactive he was today? Running around screaming with those other children? Sugar is the last thing he needed. I did you a favor." I stared at her, momentarily speechless at the callousness. "A favor? You destroyed something that meant the world to him, that I saved for months to give him." "Oh, please, it was just a cake," she dismissed with a wave of her manicured hand. "You're raising him with no sense of decorum or self-control. Someone needs to introduce some discipline into his life." Richard appeared beside her, then finally off his phone. "What's the holdup, Nat? We need to leave in 10 minutes to make our reservation. Bishop is having a meltdown because I disposed of some garish sugar bomb that was masquerading as a cake," Natalie explained to him with an eye roll. "Apparently I'm the villain for thinking about Carter's actual well-being." Richard gave me a condescending look. "Children need structure and boundaries, not indulgence. Natalie was just trying to help. Your son could benefit from more discipline. He's rather unruly compared to our friends' children." The audacity of this man, who had spent the entire party on his phone, who had given my son a re-gifted present, presuming to lecture me about parenting, left me momentarily stunned. My mother appeared then, sensing conflict. "What's going on?" "The children are waiting for cake. Can we resolve this quickly?" "Natalie threw Carter's birthday cake in the trash," I stated flatly. My mother's eyes widened, but she quickly composed herself. "I'm sure there's been a misunderstanding. Natalie wouldn't do that. Would you, dear?" "Mom, I literally just admitted to it," Natalie said, with exasperation. "That cake was ridiculous. It looked like something from a carnival, not a proper celebration. Besides, we need to go. Richard's parents don't tolerate tardiness." Rather than expressing shock at Natalie's actions, my mother immediately shifted into conflict resolution mode. "Well, these things happen. Bishop, couldn't you run to the store and get another cake? Something simple but nice." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Mom, are you serious right now? Natalie deliberately ruined Carter's birthday, and your solution is for me to leave my son's party to replace what she destroyed." "You're blowing this out of proportion," my mother insisted. "Natalie is under tremendous stress with the wedding next weekend. We need to be understanding." Understanding of her destroying an 8-year-old's birthday cake, I countered, my voice rising, despite my efforts to stay calm. From behind us came a small voice that stopped everyone cold. "Dad, is something wrong with me?" Carter stood there, having slipped away from the games. His small face was a picture of confusion, and heard his new watch clutched in his hand instead of worn proudly on his wrist. "Aunt Natalie said I didn't deserve my cake," he continued, his voice wobbling. "Is it because I'm too jumpy I can be quieter?" The raw vulnerability in his question shattered something in me. In that moment, seeing my son question his own worth because of my sister's cruelty, something fundamental shifted. For years I had tolerated Natalie's behavior, made excuses, stepped aside to keep the peace. But this was a line crossed that could not be uncrossed. I knelt down to Carter's level, looking him straight in the eyes. "There is absolutely nothing wrong with you, Carter. Nothing. You are perfect exactly as you are, energetic, curious, kind, and thoughtful. You deserve wonderful things, including your special cake." "Then why did Aunt Natalie throw it away?" he asked, a tear slipping down his cheek. I glanced up at Natalie, giving her one chance to step forward to apologize, to make this right. She merely checked her watch impatiently. That was the moment I knew what I had to do. "Carter," I said, still at eye level with my son, "how would you feel about having a different kind of special day, just you and me?" His eyes, still wet with tears, showed confusion. "But what about my party?" I wiped a tear from his cheek with my thumb. "Sometimes, buddy, we need to be around people who make us feel good about ourselves. People who celebrate who we are, not try to change us." Understanding dawned slowly on his face. "Are we leaving our own party?" "We are," I confirmed, standing up and taking his hand. "Let's get your presents." As Carter and I moved toward the picnic table where his gifts were gathered, my mother hurried after us. "Bishop, you can't be serious. What about the guests? What about Carter's friends?" "The kids can keep playing with Mike for a while longer. Their parents will understand," I replied, helping Carter collect his gifts into a large bag. "This is completely inappropriate," my mother hissed. "You're teaching Carter to run away from problems." I turned to face her. "No, Mom. I'm teaching him that he deserves respect and that it's okay to remove yourself from situations where you're being treated poorly." By now, the adult guests had sensed something was happening. Mike approached, dinosaur head removed, concern on his face. "Everything okay, man?" "Natalie threw Carter's cake in the trash because she decided he didn't deserve it," I explained quietly. "We're going to continue the celebration elsewhere." Mike's expression hardened as he glanced toward Natalie and Richard. "Need help carrying anything?" "We've got it, thanks. Could you explain to the other parents? Tell them Carter wasn't feeling well if you want to keep it simple." "You got it," Mike assured me, giving Carter's shoulder a gentle squeeze. "Happy birthday, little man. We'll do something special next weekend, okay?" As we headed toward the house with Carter's presents, Natalie finally seemed to realize this wasn't playing out as she'd expected. "You're seriously leaving your own party because of a cake," she called after us. "This is exactly the problem. You let him think the world revolves around him." I stopped and turned, making sure Carter was inside the house before I responded. "This isn't about the cake, Natalie. It's about years of you treating my son like he's somehow deficient for being a normal, energetic child. It's about you thinking your feelings matter more than his. It's about basic decency and kindness, something I'd hope an adult would understand better than an 8-year-old, but apparently not." My father, who had been silently watching everything unfold, finally spoke up. "Bishop, surely there's a way to resolve this without leaving." "Not today, Dad. Today is about Carter feeling special and loved, not navigating adult drama." "But what will people think?" my mother interjected, clearly mortified at the social implications of the host leaving his own party. "I don't care what people think when it comes to protecting my son," I replied firmly. "Carter and I are leaving. Mike will help wrap things up here." As I turned to go, I addressed everyone gathered, including Natalie and Richard. "I hope someday you understand that kindness isn't a weakness. It takes far more strength to be gentle than to be cruel. And Carter has more strength in his little finger than some adults I know." With that parting statement, I collected Carter and our things, and we walked to my car parked in the driveway. As I was helping Carter into his booster seat, I could hear my mother pleading for us to stay while Mike was already gathering the other children for more games, smoothly covering our exit. "Where are we going, Dad?" Carter asked as I started the car. "Wherever you want, buddy. This is still your special day." He thought for a moment, his expression serious. "Can we get ice cream? The really big kind, with lots of toppings?" "Absolutely," I said, managing a smile for him. "And after that, anything else you want to do?" As we pulled away from our house, I could see my family still standing in the driveway. My mother looking distressed, my father uncomfortable, Natalie and Richard already getting into their luxury SUV, clearly eager to make their dinner. Reservation. My phone immediately began buzzing with texts and calls, but I silenced it, determined to focus solely on salvaging what remained of Carter's birthday. "Dad," Carter said after we'd driven in silence for a few minutes, "did I do something that made Aunt Natalie mad?" The question broke my heart all over again. "No, buddy. Some grown-ups just have a hard time remembering what it's like to be a kid. This isn't about you at all. It's about Aunt Natalie's problems, not yours." "She doesn't like me very much, does she?" he asked with the devastating directness only children possess. I considered sugarcoating my answer but decided on honesty. "I think Aunt Natalie has trouble connecting with people who are different from her. But that's her loss because you are the most amazing kid in the world." We arrived at Carter's favorite ice cream parlor, Scoops and Sprinkles, where the staff knew us by name. When I explained to Marnie, the owner, that we were salvaging a birthday celebration, she went all out, creating a massive dinosaur-themed sundae, with 8 candles, getting the entire shop to sing to Carter and refusing to let me pay. After ice cream, we headed to the movie theater and caught the early evening showing of the latest animated film Carter had been wanting to see. Sitting in the darkened theater, Carter's face illuminated by the screen as he laughed at the movie's jokes, I felt a mixture of sadness for how the day had unfolded, but also conviction that I'd made the right choice. This, his happiness, his sense of security, was what mattered. After the movie, we made one final stop at Dino World, a small toy store specializing in dinosaur merchandise. I let Carter pick out any item he wanted. He chose a realistic velociraptor figure that made sounds and had articulated joints. By the time we arrived home, it was nearly 9 o'clock. The yard had been cleaned up, Mike's doing no doubt, and the house was quiet. I had 15 missed calls and over 30 text messages, but I ignored them, focusing on getting a tired but happier Carter ready for bed. As I tucked him in, surrounded by his new presents, Carter looked up at me thoughtfully. "Dad, even though my cake got ruined, this was still a good birthday." "Yeah," I asked, throat tight with emotion. "Yeah," he confirmed, "because you made me feel special anyway." I leaned down and kissed his forehead. "You are special, Carter. Every single day, not just on your birthday. Don't ever forget that." He was asleep within minutes, clutching his new velociraptor. I sat beside his bed for a while longer, watching his peaceful face, and making a silent promise that I would always protect him like this, not just from physical harm, but from people who would diminish his light. Finally, I checked my phone, scrolling through the barrage of messages. Multiple texts from my mother expressing her dismay at my dramatic exit and concern about what the neighbors would think. Several from my father asking me to call Mom because she was upset. One from Mike confirming he'd handled everything at the party and offering to bring coffee tomorrow. And a single text from Natalie. "Thanks for ruining my dinner with Richard's parents." Mom couldn't stop crying. Real mature. I turned off my phone without responding to any of them and went to bed emotionally exhausted, but certain I had done right by my son. I woke Sunday morning to sunlight streaming through the blinds and the distinct feeling something important had happened. As the events of yesterday filtered back into my consciousness, I reached for my phone out of habit, then remembered I'd turned it off. With Carter still sleeping soundly across the hall, I decided to power it on, bracing myself for whatever awaited. The phone vibrated continuously for nearly a minute as notifications flooded in. 23 missed calls, 47 text messages, and 5 voicemails. Most were from my mother, with a significant number from Natalie as well. Even my father, who rarely used his phone for anything beyond weather updates and sports scores, had called 3 times. As I scrolled through the text messages, the tone shifted dramatically from the previous night. My mother's messages evolved from, "Bishop, this behavior is unacceptable. Please come back immediately." 2. "Please call as soon as you get this. It's an emergency regarding Natalie's wedding." And finally, sent at 5:30 this morning, "Bishop, please call me immediately. Natalie's wedding is about to be canceled. I'm begging you." The voicemails followed a similar pattern of escalating panic. I played the most recent one, recorded just 30 minutes ago. "Bishop, it's Mom. I know you're angry about yesterday, and maybe you have a right to be, but please, please call me back. Richard's mother called the venue this morning. She's friends with the owner's wife. And, oh God, just call me back. Natalie is hysterical." Before I could process this information, my phone began ringing in my hand. Mom again. With a deep breath, I answered. "Hello." "Bishop. Thank God." My mother's voice was ragged, as though she'd been crying for hours. "Have you seen my messages? We're in a catastrophe." "I just woke up and turned my phone back on," I explained calmly. "What's going on?" "Richard's mother, Evelyn, was at Carter's party yesterday," she said, words tumbling out frantically. "She left early. You probably didn't notice, but she apparently overheard everything with the cake and your outburst before leaving." "It wasn't an outburst, Mom. I was defending my son. Whatever you want to call it, she continued impatiently. Evelyn took it upon herself to call Victoria Harrington this morning. Who's Victoria Harrington? The owner of Willowbrook Estate. Well, her husband owns it, but she manages the events. Evelyn and Victoria are in the same garden club or charity board or something. Anyway, Evelyn expressed concerns about the family dynamics of the upcoming wedding. I sat on the edge of my bed beginning to understand the trajectory of this disaster. What kind of concerns? She told Victoria that there was a disturbing incident at a family gathering that made her worried about potential drama at the wedding. Victoria called Natalie at 6 this morning saying they're reconsidering hosting the wedding because they don't allow family altercations at their venue. They're threatening to cancel Bishop 6 days before the wedding. The magnitude of the situation hit me. Willowbrook Estate was booked over a year in advance. The non-refundable deposit was substantial. All the vendors were coordinated through the venue. If they canceled, Natalie's dream wedding would collapse entirely. What does this have to do with me, I asked, though I already suspected the answer. Victoria was my college roommate, my mother explained, her voice breaking. She might be willing to reconsider if you speak with her personally and assure her there won't be any family drama. Please, Bishop. Natalie's wedding is falling apart. She's devastated. As if on cue, my phone buzzed with a text from Natalie. Thanks for destroying my wedding, you selfish ashole. The irony wasn't lost on me. Yesterday, Natalie had destroyed something precious to Carter without a second thought. Today, she was facing a similar loss and expected immediate sympathy and assistance. Mom, let me think about this, I said, hearing Carter beginning to stir across the hall. Think about it. There's nothing to think about. You need to call Victoria immediately. I need to get Carter breakfast first, I replied firmly. I'll call you back. I hung up despite her protests and went to check on Carter. He was sitting up in bed, hair tousled, hugging his new dinosaur. Morning, Dad, he yawned. Morning, birthday boy. How about some superhero pancakes? His face lit up. Yes. Can they be dinosaur-shaped today since it's still my birthday weekend? Absolutely, I agreed, grateful for his resilience. As I made breakfast, my phone continued its assault of notifications. I texted Mike asking if he could come over for coffee. I needed a rational sounding board before making any decisions. Mike arrived just as Carter was finishing his breakfast, bringing not just coffee but also donuts and a small bakery cake with a dinosaur drawn in frosting. Special delivery for the birthday dude, Mike announced, setting the cake on the table. Every kid deserves cake on their birthday weekend. Carter's eyes widened with delight. A dinosaur cake. Thanks, Uncle Mike. While Carter excitedly examined his cake, Mike gave me a questioning look. I nodded toward the living room, and once Carter was happily occupied, we stepped away to talk. So Mike said, handing me a coffee based on your cryptic text and the 15 messages your mom left me this morning. I'm guessing Hurricane Natalie has escalated. I filled him in on the wedding venue situation, showing him some of the increasingly frantic texts from my family. Man, Mike whistled low, that's some instant karma. But let me guess. They expect you to fix it. Apparently, I'm the only one who can smooth things over with the venue owner. Mike took a thoughtful sip of his coffee. What are you thinking? I ran a hand through my hair. Part of me feels like this is exactly what Natalie deserves. She ruined something important to Carter without a second thought. Why should I help her? And the other part recognizes this isn't just affecting Natalie, it's affecting my parents, Richard's family, all their guests. Plus, Carter will ultimately be hurt by a family rift that goes nuclear. Your family has been enabling Natalie's behavior for years, Mike pointed out. Maybe this is the wake-up call they need. Yeah, but is her wedding day the right time for that lesson? Mike considered this. What would you be teaching Carter if you rushed to Natalie's rescue after what she did? It was the right question, and it cut to the heart of my dilemma. I glanced toward the kitchen where Carter was carefully examining his cake, deciding where to take the first slice. I'd be teaching him that actions don't have consequences if you're important enough, I said slowly. That it's okay to hurt someone as long as you have the right excuse afterward. But I'd also be teaching him about forgiveness and not holding grudges, about being the bigger person. Mike nodded. So, what's the Bishop Hawkins solution? I thought for a moment, an idea forming. Maybe there's a middle path. Help but with conditions. Use this as a teaching moment, for Carter and for Natalie. Now that Mike said raising his coffee cup in a toast sounds like good parenting. After Mike left and Carter was settled with a dinosaur documentary, I finally called my mother back. "I'll talk to Victoria," I said, before she could launch into another panicked monologue. "But I have conditions." "Conditions," she repeated. "Bishop, this is no time for." "It's the only way, Mom. I'll help save Natalie's wedding, but first we're going to have a family meeting. Today. All of us, including Richard. And Natalie needs to understand exactly why I'm willing to help and what I expect going forward." There was a long pause before she responded. "Fine. Whatever you want. Just please call Victoria today. We'll meet at our house at 4. As I hung up, I looked at Carter, completely absorbed in his documentary, occasionally mimicking the T-Rex on screen with his new toy. I had taught him about consequences when he made mistakes, but I'd also taught him about making amends and second chances. Now it was time for Natalie to learn the same lesson. At precisely 4 o'clock, Carter and I pulled into my parents' driveway. I'd spent the afternoon preparing him for this family meeting, explaining in simple terms that we were going to talk about what happened at his party and try to make things better with Aunt Natalie. "Will she be mad at us?" Carter asked as we walked to the front door. "She might be," I answered honestly. "But sometimes people need to hear difficult truths to help them grow. Remember how you were scared of diving into the pool, but once you did it, you were so proud of yourself." He nodded. Sometimes grown-ups need a little push to face their fears, too. Aunt Natalie is afraid of not being perfect, so when people point out her mistakes, it scares her. My mother opened the door before we could knock, her face lined with stress. "Thank goodness you're here. Everyone's waiting in the living room." The tension was palpable as we entered. My father sat in his usual armchair looking uncomfortable. Natalie and Richard occupied the sofa, my sister's eyes red-rimmed from crying, though her posture remained rigid with anger. Richard looked annoyed, checking his watch the moment we entered. "Carter, why don't you go play in the den?" my mother suggested. "Grandpa set up your old train set." "Actually," I said, keeping my hand on Carter's shoulder, "I'd like Carter to stay for the first part of our conversation. This concerns him too." Natalie scoffed. "This is ridiculous. We don't have time for your parenting statements, Bishop. My wedding is literally falling apart while you play power games." "It'll take exactly as much time as needed," I replied calmly, guiding Carter to a chair and taking the one beside him. "Victoria has agreed to speak with me at 6, so we have plenty of time to sort this out." "You've already talked to her," my mother gasped. "I've texted her that I'll call at 6. She's agreed to wait for my call before making any final decisions about the venue." Relief flooded my mother's face while Natalie's expression remained stormy. "Great. So you've established you have the power to save or destroy my wedding," Natalie snapped. "Congratulations. What do you want, a medal, or just the satisfaction of watching me beg?" "Neither," I said evenly. "What I want is for you to understand why we're in this situation to begin with." Richard leaned forward, clearly impatient. "Look, we all know Natalie made a mistake with the cake. It was inappropriate, she acknowledges that. Can we move on to solving the actual crisis now?" "Does she acknowledge it?" I asked, looking directly at my sister. "Because I haven't heard that from her." "Fine." Natalie threw up her hands. "I shouldn't have thrown away the cake. It was wrong. There, are you happy? Will you call Victoria now?" "That's not an acknowledgement, Natalie. That's saying what you think I want to hear to get what you want." I turned slightly toward Carter. "Buddy, when you make a mistake, what's the first thing you do?" Carter thought for a moment. "I say I'm sorry and try to fix it." "And who do you apologize to?" "The person I hurt," he answered confidently. I turned back to Natalie, letting the implication hang in the air. Natalie's jaw tightened as she realized what was expected. After a long moment, she shifted her gaze to Carter. "Carter," she began stiffly, "I'm sorry I threw away your birthday cake. It was wrong of me." Carter nodded solemnly. "That's okay, Aunt Natalie. Dad got me another cake today." His simple forgiveness seemed to catch Natalie off guard. She blinked rapidly, then looked away. "Great apology accepted," Richard interjected. "Now can we please move on to saving our wedding? We have $50,000 of non-refundable deposits at stake." "It's not just about the cake," I continued undeterred. "It's about a pattern of behavior. Natalie, you've consistently treated Carter with dismissiveness at best and cruelty at worst since the day he was born. You've criticized his energy, his interests, his very nature, all things that make him the amazing kid he is." "I'm just trying to help," Natalie protested. "Someone needs to provide structure and guidance. You let him run wild." "No, I let him be a child. There's a difference. And your help has made him question whether there's something wrong with him. No 8-year-old should ever feel that way, especially not because of family." My mother tried to intervene. "Bishop, this isn't productive. We're all stressed." "No, Mom," I interrupted firmly. "This is exactly what needs to happen. For years, everyone has made excuses for Natalie's behavior. That's just how she is. She means well. She's under stress. Meanwhile, Carter and I are expected to just absorb the criticism and judgment without complaint." I turned back to Natalie. "I want to help you, but I need to know that you understand the real problem here. This isn't just about a cake or a wedding venue. It's about respect and kindness, values I'm trying to teach. Carter values I hoped his family would reinforce." Richard scoffed. "This is absurd. We're sitting here getting lectured about kindness while our wedding is imploding." My father, who had remained silent until now, suddenly spoke up. "Richard, please." His voice was quiet but firm. "My son is right. This conversation is long overdue." Everyone turned to look at him in surprise. "Thomas," my mother began. "No, Patricia," he cut her off gently. "We've been enabling Natalie for too long. I've been enabling her, and it stops today." He looked at me with something like regret in his eyes. "Bishop, I owe you an apology. I should have spoken up years ago when Natalie started treating Carter poorly. I convinced myself it wasn't my place to intervene, that it would create unnecessary drama. But my silence has hurt both you and my grandson, and I'm sorry for that." The room was stunned into silence. My father rarely expressed himself this directly. He turned to Natalie next. "And Natalie, I love you dearly, but your behavior has been unacceptable, not just with the cake, but for years. We did you no favors by never setting boundaries. That's on your mother and me. But moving forward, if you want the support of this family, you need to show respect to every member of it, including Carter." Natalie stared at our father, mouth slightly open. I'd never seen her look so thrown off balance. My father continued, his voice gentle but unwavering. "Now I want this wedding to happen. We've all invested in it, emotionally and financially. But Bishop is right about there needing to be changes." The atmosphere in the room had shifted dramatically. My mother was dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. Richard was staring at his shoes, no longer projecting impatience. And Natalie, for perhaps the first time in her adult life, looked completely vulnerable. "I don't understand," she said finally, her voice small. "Why do you all suddenly hate me?" "No one hates you, Natalie," I said softly. "This isn't about hate. It's about setting healthy boundaries. I want Carter to have a good relationship with his aunt, but that can only happen if you see him for who he is, not who you think he should be." "I don't know how to do that," she admitted, the admission clearly difficult for her. "I don't know how to connect with children. They're unpredictable and messy and scary." It was perhaps the most honest thing I'd ever heard her say. "Why are they scary?" I asked, genuinely curious. She looked down at her perfectly manicured nails. "Because they see through you. They don't care about your achievements or your image or how much your shoes cost. They just see you." She glanced at Carter briefly. "And what if they don't like what they see?" In that moment, I glimpsed the insecurity beneath my sister's polished exterior. The fear that without her carefully constructed facade of perfection, she might not be lovable. "Carter," I said, "remember when you made that special card for Aunt Natalie's birthday last year? Why did you do that?" Carter shifted in his chair, suddenly shy with everyone looking at him. "Because she's my aunt and I love her, and I thought it might make her smile." Natalie's eyes widened slightly. You see, I said gently. Children aren't looking to judge you, Natalie. They're looking to connect. Carter has been trying to connect with you his entire life. Tears welled in Natalie's eyes, and for once she didn't try to hide them. I don't deserve his love, or this wedding, or any of it. The words came out in a whisper. I ruined everything. Richard surprised everyone by placing his hand over hers. No, you didn't, he said, his tone softer than I'd ever heard it. We can fix this. He looked at me. If your brother is willing to help us. I nodded slowly. I am. On one condition moving forward, we all commit to treating each other with respect. That means no more dismissing Carter's feelings, no more backhanded comments about my parenting, and no more pretending hurtful behavior is acceptable because it's family. I can do that, Natalie said, wiping her eyes. I want to do better, I just don't always know how. That's okay, I assured her. We all make mistakes. What matters is that we learn from them. My mother, who had been uncharacteristically quiet during most of this exchange, finally spoke. Bishop, when did you become so wise? When I became a father, I answered simply, I have to think about the example I'm setting every day. There was a moment of collective reflection broken by Carter tugging on my sleeve. Dad, can I go play with the trains now? This grown-up stuff is boring. The tension in the room dissolved into surprised laughter. Yes, buddy, go ahead, I chuckled, ruffling his hair. As Carter scampered off to the den, Natalie stood up. I'll help him set up the tracks, she offered tentatively, looking at me for approval. He'd like that, I said, with an encouraging nod. After she left, I turned to my parents and Richard. I'll call Victoria at 6 and smooth things over. I'm confident she'll keep the venue reservation. Thank you, Richard said with what seemed like genuine gratitude. And I apologize for my mother's interference. She can be overprotective. It all worked out for the best, my father remarked. Sometimes we need a wake-up call to see what's really important. I excused myself to make a quick call to Mike, updating him on the situation. When I returned to the living room, I could hear something unexpected from the den laughter. Carter's high-pitched giggles mixed with Natalie's more restrained chuckles. Peering in, I saw them sitting on the floor together, a train derailment, apparently the source of their amusement. Carter was explaining something to Natalie with animated gestures, and she was actually listening, nodding, and asking questions. It wasn't a miracle transformation. One conversation wouldn't undo years of patterns, but it was a start, the first green shoot of what might become something healthier. At 6 o'clock, I called Victoria Harrington. The conversation was brief but productive. I explained that there had been a family misunderstanding that was now resolved, assured her there would be no drama at the wedding, and even offered to speak with her in person if necessary. That won't be needed, Bishop, she said warmly. I know your mother well enough to trust your word. The wedding is still on. When I announced the news, Natalie's relief was palpable. She hugged me, perhaps the first genuine embrace we'd shared in years. Thank you, she whispered. I don't deserve your help after how I've treated you and Carter. Family is complicated, I replied, but we keep trying because it matters. As Carter and I prepared to leave, Natalie knelt down to Carter's level, something I'd never seen her do before. Carter, I was thinking, would you like to be part of my wedding? Maybe as a junior groomsman, you could walk down the aisle with the rings. Carter's eyes widened. Really, I could be in the fancy wedding. Only if you want to, she assured him. I'd be honored to have you there. Can I wear a dinosaur tie with my suit? He bargained immediately. Natalie laughed. A real laugh, not her usual polite social titter. I think that could be arranged. Green to match the bridesmaids' dresses. Deal, Carter exclaimed, sealing it with a high five that Natalie only slightly hesitated before returning. As we drove home that evening, Carter looked thoughtful. Dad, I think Aunt Natalie might be nice underneath all her scariness. I think you might be right, buddy. I agreed. Sometimes people just need help remembering how to be nice. Like when I get really mad and you help me take deep breaths? Exactly like that. Everyone needs reminders sometimes. He nodded sagely. I'm glad we're helping with her wedding. Weddings should be happy. Out of the mouths of babes, as they say. In his simple wisdom, Carter had captured the essence of what family should be, helping each other find our way back to happiness, even when the path gets complicated. The week leading up to Natalie's wedding passed in a blur of activity. Carter was fitted for his junior groomsman suit, complete with the promised dinosaur tie, a subtle Tyrannosaurus Rex pattern in forest green that somehow managed to look both whimsical and elegant. He took his new role with utmost seriousness, practicing walking slowly down our hallway with a throw pillow standing in for the ring-bearer's cushion. "Remember, Dad," he informed me solemnly, "Uncle Richard said I'm carrying something worth more than our car." "Well, then we better make sure you don't trip," I teased, helping him practice his formal walk for the 20th time. The change in Natalie over that week was subtle, but noticeable. Her wedding-related communications became less demanding and more appreciative. She invited Carter to the rehearsal dinner, something that wouldn't have happened before, and actually listened to his excited chatter about dinosaurs for a full 5 minutes without checking her phone once. When Saturday arrived, wedding day, there was the usual flurry of last-minute crises. The florist delivered blush roses instead of pale pink. One of the bridesmaids had an allergic reaction to her makeup. The best man temporarily misplaced his speech. But through it all, Natalie maintained a surprising level of composure. "A week ago, any one of these things would have sent her into a tailspin," my mother remarked as we waited in the venue's grand foyer. "Near catastrophe has a way of putting smaller problems into perspective," my father replied wisely. Willowbrook Estate was even more impressive than I'd imagined. A historic mansion with manicured gardens and a ballroom that looked like something from a fairy tale. As Carter and I explored before the ceremony, we found ourselves in a quiet courtyard with a fountain. "Dad, I'm a little nervous," Carter admitted, fidgeting with his tie. "What if I drop the rings?" I knelt down to his level. "Then someone will pick them up and the wedding will go on. But you know what, I don't think you'll drop them. You've been practicing all week, and you're great at important jobs." "Really?" he asked, seeking reassurance. "Really," I confirmed. "And even if something does go wrong, it'll just become a funny story to tell later. The most important weddings aren't about everything being perfect. They're about the love people share." He considered this. "Like how you always say, it's okay to make mistakes as long as we learn from them." Exactly like that. We were interrupted by the wedding planner frantically searching for us. "There you are. The bride is asking for Carter." Immediately. Exchanging concerned looks, we followed her to the bridal suite where Natalie was surrounded by her bridesmaids in various states of preparation. When she saw us, she dismissed everyone else from the room. "Is everything okay?" I asked cautiously. Natalie, resplendent in her wedding dress, nodded. "Everything's fine. I just wanted to talk to Carter privately, before the ceremony." She hesitated. "Both of you, actually." She knelt down, carefully mindful of her dress, to meet Carter at eye level. "Carter, I wanted to tell you something important before I get married. I haven't been a very good aunt to you, and I'm sorry for that. I was scared of not being perfect, and sometimes when grown-ups are scared, they act mean instead of brave." Carter listened with solemn attention. "But you," she continued, "have been nothing but kind to me even when I didn't deserve it. You made me special cards and always tried to share your interests with me. That's true bravery. Being kind even when others aren't kind to you." She reached into a small bag beside her and pulled out a small box. "I got you something. A thank you for being in my wedding, but also an apology for the cake." Carter opened the box to reveal a miniature dinosaur cake topper, a perfectly crafted T-Rex identical to the one that had been on his ruined birthday cake. "I had it custom-made," Natalie explained. "The baker who made my wedding cake created it based on the photos of your original cake. I thought maybe after the reception we could have our own little celebration with a small cake and this topper." Carter's face lit up. "My very own dino cake after your big cake." "Exactly," she smiled. "Is that okay?" In response, Carter threw his arms around her neck in a hug, careful not to wrinkle her dress too badly. "It's the best, Aunt Natalie." Over Carter's shoulder, Natalie met my eyes, her own shining with tears. "Thank you," she mouthed silently. I nodded, a lump forming in my throat. This wasn't just about a cake topper or a wedding. It was about healing, the slow, imperfect process of family finding their way back to each other. The wedding ceremony itself was beautiful. Carter performed his ring-bearer duties, flawlessly walking with careful dignity down the aisle, his dinosaur tie proudly displayed. When he handed the rings to Richard with a formal little bow that he'd apparently practiced in secret, there wasn't a dry eye in the front row. At the reception after dinner and the traditional first dances, Natalie surprised everyone by asking the DJ for a special announcement. "Ladies and gentlemen," the DJ's voice boomed. "The bride would like to invite her nephew Carter to the dance floor for a special dance." Carter looked at me in confusion. This hadn't been part of the rehearsal. "Go on," I encouraged. "Aunt Natalie wants to dance with you." As Carter stepped onto the dance floor, the DJ played "What a Wonderful World," and Natalie took both of Carter's hands in hers. They swayed together, Natalie occasionally twirling Carter, both of them laughing. It wasn't a choreographed performance, just an aunt and nephew finding joy in a simple moment together. Watching them, I felt a hand on my shoulder. It was my father. "You did this," he said quietly. "You stood your ground and helped both of them find something better." "I just wanted Carter to be treated with kindness," I replied. "And in doing so, you may have helped Natalie more than you know. I've never seen her this peaceful, even on her wedding day with all its stresses." He was right. Throughout the evening, Natalie had been present in a way I'd never witnessed before, laughing, genuinely thanking guests, sincerely even kicking off her shoes to dance more comfortably. The rigid perfectionism that had defined her for so long seemed to have loosened its grip, at least for today. Later, as promised, Natalie arranged for a small dinosaur-shaped cake to be brought out. She gathered our immediate family in a quiet corner of the ballroom, while the main reception continued. "A special birthday redo for Carter," she announced as Carter's eyes widened at the cake. "But it's your wedding day," Carter said, confused by the attention. "Yes, but family celebrations can overlap," she explained. "That's the wonderful thing about family. There's always room for more joy." As Carter blew out a symbolic candle and cut into his dinosaur cake, I reflected on the journey of the past week. What had begun with heartbreak had transformed into something healing, not just for Carter, but for our entire family. Standing up for what was right hadn't been easy. It had meant risking relationships and facing uncomfortable truths. But in doing so, we'd created space for something more authentic to grow. The boundaries I'd established hadn't pushed people away. They'd actually drawn us closer in more meaningful ways. Throughout the remainder of the reception, I watched Carter navigate the celebration with growing confidence. He danced with his grandparents, charmed Richard's relatives, and even gave an impromptu dinosaur fact presentation to a group of amused wedding guests. He was thriving in an environment where he felt valued exactly as he was. As the evening wound down, Carter and I found ourselves outside on the venue's terrace, taking a break from the music and crowds. The stars were bright overhead, and the garden lights cast a warm glow across the landscape. Dad, Carter said, his voice thoughtful. "I think sometimes people forget how to be kind and they need someone to remind them." "That's very wise, buddy. Where did you learn that?" "From you," he said simply. "You're always saying that when people are mean, they're usually sad or scared about something. Like when Tommy at school was picking on everyone because his parents were getting divorced." I nodded, touched that he'd internalized these lessons. "And you know what else?" he continued. "I think Aunt Natalie was sad or scared about something for a really long time, but she's getting better now." "I think you're right," I agreed. "And you've helped her a lot by being so forgiving." He shrugged. "That's what family does, right? We forgive each other and try again." In that moment, watching my son's profile against the starlit sky, I felt a profound sense of pride. Despite the challenges we'd faced, losing Emma, navigating life as a single parent dealing with family tensions, Carter was growing into a person of exceptional emotional intelligence and compassion. The wedding wrapped up around midnight with Carter falling asleep in my arms during the final slow dances. As I carried him to the car, Natalie and Richard approached us to say goodbye before leaving for their honeymoon. "Thank you both," Natalie said softly, placing a gentle hand on Carter's sleeping head, "for more than saving the wedding, for saving me from myself a little bit." "We're family," I replied simply. through all the messy, complicated parts. "I'm learning that messy doesn't mean bad," she admitted. "It took almost losing my wedding to realize what really matters. And it's not the perfect venue or the designer dress. What matters is this," Richard added, unexpectedly gesturing to Carter. "Family, love, the real stuff." He'd shown a different side of himself throughout the day. Less concerned with business calls and status, more present and engaged. As we said our goodbyes and I settled Carter into his booster seat, I reflected on the profound truth that often emerges from our most difficult moments, that standing up for what matters, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it risks relationships, is ultimately how we build more authentic connections. The week had taught me that true family isn't about perfect harmony or always agreeing. It's about holding space for each other's growth, establishing healthy boundaries and choosing kindness even in the face of hurt. It's about recognizing that love isn't always easy, but it's always worth fighting for. Driving home under the canopy of stars, my sleeping son beside me, I felt a deep sense of peace. We would continue to face challenges. That was the nature of family of life. But we now had a stronger foundation from which to meet them. And in the end, that was the greatest gift we could give each other. Have you ever had to stand up to family to protect someone you love? What did you learn from the experience? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe if this resonated with you, and share with someone who might need to hear that setting boundaries with family isn't selfish. It's often the most loving thing we can do. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, true strength isn't found in perfection, but in how we handle life's imperfect moments.